Hey there people, how you doing? So, today we have quite an interesting comparison right here. This is between the Galaxy S21 Ultra and OnePlus 8 Pro. Now, obviously none of these require quite an introduction as such, because the OnePlus 8 Pro last year, a fantastic flagship, the first one ever from OnePlus, and well, they did a very good job with it. The cameras at launch at least were good, they were very nice, but then with numerous software updates, fixes to skin tones, white balance, and the overall quality, it was improved by quite a bit. And at the end, I think by end of 2020, it was quite an amazing smartphone with cameras that almost excelled phones that were double the price, at least in India. Now it's time to see how it can fare against the next generation of flagships. The first and foremost one being the Galaxy S21 Ultra. So let's get started with our first image. So this is an ultra wide shot right here, and well, initially there are not a lot of differences. Both have fantastic ultra wides as you'd expect, but certain things to note are first and foremost, the detail levels on the S21 Ultra is staggeringly higher. Now there is some amount of grain and noise in the very lower part of the image for the S21, but overall details are still much better compared to the OnePlus 8 Pro. And secondly, and the main reason why I'm gonna hand the win to the S21 Ultra is if you look at the upper part of the image, the OnePlus 8 Pro's shadows, especially in the building and all that, it's very blue, while the S21 Ultra is doing a better job in maintaining a proper color contrast. Now why the OnePlus is blending it all together, I'm not exactly sure, but it doesn't exactly look nice. Moving on to the main camera shots, and once again, the detail levels on the S21 are definitely higher. You can look at the wall on the right hand side and well, it's way more detailed, that much for certain. Now for an indoor shot right here, well, this one was kind of tricky because we had some high contrast, we had some highlights right there to control, and well, both are doing a great job right here, that much I can tell you for certain. But the S21 Ultra does have much more natural colors in the sense that it maintains a lot of the warmth in the image. And secondly, because of its higher contrast, the overall image looks a little bit better, at least that's what I think. The contrast really gives a very good balance and it doesn't make it look very faded. The OnePlus is trying to ramp up the shadows and it's just not doing a great job there. Now this here is kind of a tricky shot once again. This is indoors, and just take a look at those lights and the reflections as well. OnePlus is blowing out every single one of those highlights right there. The S21 Ultra, however, is doing a much better job compared to the OnePlus, that much for certain. And well, the overall colors and all that, I don't think there's much of a difference. The details are also very similar overall. So I think the major difference here is in the highlights and the dynamic range. Now moving into 10 times zoom, and this is where the S21 Ultra really shines. Now obviously the S21's image isn't the best in the world because 10 times zoom is optical on the S21, sure, but it also requires a lot of light to really bring out all the details. So it's not bad, but compared to the OnePlus, it's leagues ahead. Like, it's not even a comparison at this point. Moving on to 30 times zoom right there, and well, obviously the S21 is better, although it's not a very sharp image once again. It's kind of smudged up because it's trying to reduce a lot of noise right there. But once again, the S21 Ultra is leagues ahead because zoom is something that Samsung nailed this time around, and it's very much visible right here. But the moment we move on to the 108 megapixel mode on the S21 Ultra versus 48 megapixels on the OnePlus 8 Pro, well, I gotta be honest, I didn't expect the S21 Ultra's dynamic range to be this good. I mean, yeah, the OnePlus 8 Pro is good, it's fine. But the S21 Ultra, if you look at the building, it has so much better colors and is exposing the shadows slightly better as well. Now, I do want to point out that the OnePlus does look a little bit more natural in terms of the colors on the building, but I do like the S21 Ultra much more, to be honest. So, considering that the S21 Ultra is handling double or more than double the resolution of the OnePlus 8 Pro and still maintaining such an amazing dynamic range, that really goes to show just how good the S21 Ultra really is. Now zooming in up to 500% on both of them, and it's again very clear that not only is the dynamic range better on the S21, you can also see that we do have a tad bit more detail. Now the difference isn't as high as the numbers, like 108 megapixels should mean we should be getting like more than double the detail. But that's not really happening. So yeah, the OnePlus 8 Pro, considering it has 48 megapixels, is still doing a fantastic job in terms of just bringing out all the details. The S21 though, it does take a win because, at the end, more detail is more detail. Now moving on to zoom. Now this is 3 times zoom on both of them. It is actually optical on both, as a matter of fact. And I do want to point out that the colors and the look of the image, they kind of like switched places, because the S21 now, contrary to before, is more natural. It has less vibrance overall in the building especially, while the OnePlus, it is ramping up the shadows, it is giving us a little bit more dynamic range, I do want to say that, and it's also giving us much more vibrance and making the building look very flattering as such. Kinda interesting turn of events if you ask me. The overall quality, however, is very, very similar. I don't think that either of these will disappoint. But the moment we move on to 10 times zoom, well, it's very clear that the S21 Ultra is leagues ahead. Once again, like, it's obvious. 10 times optical zoom. I don't think there are many phones out there that can actually stand a chance against this one. Now, to touch upon macro, I honestly didn't expect that we would have any difference here. But it would appear that even though the OnePlus 8 Pro does have macro mode in its ultra-wide-angle camera, which by the way is the right way to do it, and also the S21 Ultra uses the same method for macro, but it would appear that the minimum focusing distance for the S21 Ultra is much smaller, which is actually vital for good macro photography. You can see just how much closer we can get to the subject on the S21 Ultra compared to the OnePlus 8 Pro. I mean, that is actually quite a big difference, not something I had expected at all. Now for a super harsh backlight situation, that's a studio light back there, it really goes to show just how good the S21 Ultra is. Once again, I did not expect such a massive difference. Like, wow. The OnePlus 8 Pro, man, I expected it to do slightly better than this actually, because you can see the highlights are completely blown out. There is barely any color or contrast left in the entire shot. The shadows are completely faded. I mean, it's trying to ramp it up, it's trying to, do some dynamic range magic. Clearly it's not working out. Now the S21, however, I mean, that's an impressive image, I gotta say. Like, it looks so good, I don't even have words for it. Now, similar situation, but this time with the ultra-wide camera, and well, the differences aren't as drastic. I mean, the OnePlus is still looking very faded, especially if you look at Valentine. You can see there's a very bluish glare on him as a whole. So yeah, overall, once again, I do think that the S21 is producing a better image in such harsh conditions. Now moving on to some selfies right here. Well, this is kind of a high contrast situation wherein we have a studio light on the left hand side, and yeah, the S21 Ultra, it's definitely doing a better job in my opinion. It has much better skin tones, it is handling the highlights just a little bit better. You can see on my shirt and a few spots on my face are slightly blown out on the OnePlus 8 Pro versus it being completely controlled on the S21 Ultra. Now the previous image, it had some amount of noise in the background, especially in the shadows. But here, in portrait mode, apparently all that noise is gone, especially on the S21 Ultra. Now the OnePlus 8 Pro also tried to reduce all that noise. You can see on the darker parts of my face, there is some amount of blotchiness going on. But, overall, I do still once again prefer the S21 Ultra because more natural skin tones, better highlight retention. It's just overall a better and more pleasing image. Now moving on to a medium lighting shot. This is almost after sunset, so, the light wasn't really there. So yeah, overall, once again, a very similar set of differences. The OnePlus 8 Pro, it is definitely trying to smoothen up my skin right there. It was turned off, obviously, but still, it's brightening it up, trying to smooth it a little bit. But the S21 Ultra, with skin smoothing off, well, it's perfect. It's just the way I would like it to be on every single smartphone, because there is no smoothing. It's giving me all the details on my face and there's no problems at all. Now moving on to once again a high contrast situation, and this time with the rear camera portraits. And well, this is kind of an interesting shot, because on one hand, obviously the OnePlus 8 Pro does have slightly better highlight control, especially on my face and a little bit on my t-shirt as well. But it's very faded, as you can see. The whole right side of the image has this white glow to it, and it it really doesn't look nice. The S21 Ultra, I think it's the best at handling this kind of lighting situation. The S21 also has much better skin tones, especially in the shadows. Like in the shadows, the OnePlus 8 Pro doesn't have any saturation at all. It doesn't exactly look nice. But the moment we want to zoom in for our portraits, well, then things take a wrong turn for the S21 Ultra, because even though we have 3 times optical zoom, the S21 digitally crops into 2 times. I honestly don't know why we still have this feature, because it makes no sense. We have a much better optical zoom present right there. Just let us use it for portraits. Anyways, I digress. The OnePlus 8 Pro, as you'd expect, is doing a better job. I do like the skin tones on the S21 once again, but the OnePlus is much better in terms of details and overall sharpness, that I'm just gonna give the win to the OnePlus. I believe this is the first win for the OnePlus 8 Pro in this whole comparison. But then for this image, I think it's once again gonna be the OnePlus 8 Pro that I choose, because the overall details and all that, it's very similar on both. They're doing a great job. This is with 1x zoom on both, and skin tones on the OnePlus 8 Pro actually look much more nice and much more natural. The S21, for some reason, it is trying to redden me up a little bit. Now, I haven't seen this in the entire comparison, so I'm willing to give the S21 the benefit of the doubt, but the OnePlus is still doing a better job, so I'm just gonna give the win to the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now, one region where the S21 Ultra is clearly ahead of the OnePlus 8 Pro is in night mode portraits. Now, this is a feature new to the Galaxy lineup as such, and we didn't have it on the OnePlus 8 Pro either. So, as you can see, a backlit low light situation. I mean, I don't think it could get any harsh. The OnePlus 8 Pro could not even take a portrait image right there. The S21 Ultra, however, it's so much better, so much more details. It actually has a portrait mode shot. That's something to consider as well. And obviously, it has much better colors as such, and it's just a much better image. It's a night mode image. Obviously, it's gonna be better. Now, for night mode selfie, this is also and almost surprisingly a feature that the OnePlus 8 Pro lacks. I mean, it's been a long time. I had hoped that they would put this in eventually, but it never really happened. Kinda sad. But nonetheless, as you can see, the S21 Ultra in this backlight, low light situation, that's just kind of a role, but anyways. The S21 is so much better. Like, there is no noise on my face, the details are plenty sharp. Like, this image is fantastic. Now, the S21 also has the night mode selfie portraits, which is just bonkers if you ask me, because this shot right here, I mean, the OnePlus finally was able to take a portrait image, but you can see it just does not look nice. Blotchy, artifacted, it's a mess. Obviously the light wasn't really there, but the S21 Ultra doesn't care about that much I can tell you for sure. It's so much better compared to the OnePlus 8 Pro that it's not even a comparison at this point. Now, moving on to rear camera night modes, and it's instantly a tie, I think, because other than slightly more brightness in some parts of the image on the S21 Ultra, the overall details, noise reduction, and basically everything for the image is very, very similar for both. I mean, it's not really much of a difference here. Next up, for an outdoors image, I want to see which one of these might be able to keep the sky less artifacted. Now, both do have some amount of artifacting and just tad bit of noise here and there. The OnePlus 8 Pro has a different pattern of artifact almost. Overall, I still like the S21 Ultra. If you look at the trees, then definitely the S21 has much more detail, and it's not over sharpening. I made sure to check that. It's just the OnePlus 8 Pro trying to reduce the noise, and is definitely not doing the best job in the world. Now, the S21 also gives us a capability to zoom in with night mode. So this is 3 times zoom. Obviously, it's not the best quality in the world, but even so, I think it's just amazing compared to the OnePlus 8 Pro, because even though the OnePlus does have 3 times optical zoom, we are not allowed to zoom in during night mode. It's kind of sad that we are restricted to just the ultra wide and the main camera. Then we have 10 times optical zoom at night on the S21 Ultra. Once again, the fact that I could actually get a stable shot with 10 times zoom, it really goes to show that the S21 is not here to mess around, especially when it comes to zoom. Now for ultra wide night mode, I don't think that at least in this lighting situation there's much of a difference. The S21 Ultra does have slightly higher contrast, which I personally do prefer, but the OnePlus 8 Pro is not bad at all. It's doing a very good job in terms of giving us good details, and it does have a overall flatter look, but that's personal preference, to be honest. As I said before, macro is actually better on the S21 Ultra, but you can actually use the macro capability of the ultra wide camera on the S21 with night mode. So yeah, you can see this looks fantastic right here. The OnePlus 8 Pro, for some odd reason, would not activate macro, like it would not focus on that leaf, and it's kind of interesting because it obviously uses the ultra wide camera for macro, so why not use it during night mode to focus on the leaf? Now ultra low light, well, both are producing very drastically different images. The OnePlus 8 Pro is actually overexposing the image, because you can see we had a warm light back there, a dim warm light, and it's getting overexposed. Damn, that's quite something if you ask me. I mean, that's a very respectable degree of brightening up an image, but it's not exactly the desired option here, because the S21 is definitely doing a much better job in terms of giving us a balanced image overall. It has much better contrast, it has much better detail. You can see the table is so much sharper compared to the OnePlus 8 Pro. I mean, I'm gonna go with the S21 Ultra. I don't see any reason to pick the OnePlus 8 Pro's image, even though, yeah, sure, it is technically giving us a much brighter image in super low light conditions. I mean, I could barely see anything. For the moon, well, I couldn't shoot the moon on the OnePlus 8 Pro because the moon was not present. I went out, I tried to shoot the moon, and we had a little bit of overcast and I couldn't shoot the moon. So this is the older image I used for the iPhone 12 comparison on the S21 Ultra. And the point here is that even if I would have shot the moon on the OnePlus 8 Pro at the end of the day, the phone which has better, higher zoom quality is gonna triumph. So basically, the S21 Ultra, which has 10 times optical zoom, this is 30 times, and you can see it's tremendously detailed for a moonshot at 30 times zoom. Now the OnePlus 8 Pro, I doubt it would have fared this well. It has 3 times optical zoom, and compared to 10 times on the S21 Ultra, it probably wouldn't have given us much of a good looking image. Then obviously we can go much further on the S21 Ultra with 100 times zoom, and well, this is basically something that the OnePlus 8 Pro just cannot do. Its maximum zoom range is 30 times, so yeah, it couldn't have even taken the image even if the moon was present. So yeah, kind of an odd ending to a camera comparison with just the S21 Ultra's images, but the point is, the S21 Ultra is basically the king of zoom, at least at this point. So how does the OnePlus 8 Pro really fare compared to the S21 Ultra? Well, I gotta say that in the places where it was fair, the hardware was similar to a certain degree, I would say it gets close, pretty close. I believe the OnePlus 8 Pro took 2, maybe 3 wins in the entire comparison. I mean, that does go to show that the S21 Ultra and basically the new generation of flagships in 2021 are truly fantastic. These cameras on the S21 Ultra are amazing. I mean, I'm impressed through and through. For every single photography camera comparison that I've done, it's impressed me, especially the moonshots. Anyways, I think that at least compared to last year, the S21 Ultra's cameras as a whole, in terms of skin tones, details, dynamic range, especially in 108 megapixels, zoom, obviously, it's improved quite a bit. It's gotten much more consistent, it has a much more natural look, and it basically gives us more pleasing and, again, more consistent images. The OnePlus 8 Pro, I already said it before, but I'll say it again. The updates have done some serious magic to that camera, but when it comes to the S21 Ultra versus OnePlus 8 Pro, in terms of cameras alone, I guess I'm gonna suggest the S21 Ultra because it's just got so much more, and it's basically got better cameras. I mean, that's expected. There's a whole generational difference right here. But anyways, I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, do hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be seeing you guys later. Cheers.